Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, Karen demands to use my computer even though there was another one right next to me. My girlfriend, who's 34, and I, 31, we work in the same company and on the same job for the same department, but in different offices. I work downstairs and she works upstairs. I've had a very tough couple of weeks with 2 times the workload and half the staff working with me on my customers, while her customers are all on vacation and there's not much for her to do at the moment. She came downstairs yesterday to search for a document she needed. She found the document and asked to use my computer to check for something. I would have had to pause my job, log out, she would log in, check her thing. It would take about 5 minutes. I told her there's a computer next to mine which nobody's using and she can use that one. She then told me she never used it before and it takes too long to sync, about 5 to 10 minutes. I told her I was busy and that she could hang out with me while waiting and it would be fun. We could talk and I could still finish my critical tasks while she's waiting for hers to sync. Her eyes got watery and she walked away. I explained to her via chat how it came out bad, but the idea still stands. Why should I pause when there's a perfectly good computer next to me? Am I the jerk? She blocked me on everything except my number and says vile things to me. I asked her to focus on moving on because it's such a small thing and she makes it out to be a life-changing experience. For lunch, she asked me what I wanted and she brought it to me. I thought all was well until she completely ignored me while we ate, and when I was finished, I thanked her and made small talk with her, but she just told me to go away. Side note, 2 women from IT and HR came up to me and thanked me for an ad clip that I had recently worked on. They told me good job and asked to see the clips after lunch. She then blamed me for being too good to others and not to her. She then ended up leaving me at work even though we had ridden there together and I was depending on her for a ride home. I was upset, but decided to go ahead and rent a car so I could get home. At least I got to rent this car for the first time. It was a Bolt and I had never driven one before. When I got home, I cooked us a meal, which she completely ignored. She ate random stuff from the fridge instead. I didn't make any talk with her, neither did she. She then continued to watch Grey's Anatomy until midnight. I went to bed at 21:30 because it's been tough and I'm tired from work. Also, I didn't want to argue because it just wears me out. Help me out. Am I really the jerk? Not the jerk. Your girlfriend needs to get better at handling your working and personal relationship. Your response regarding the computer was a very reasonable one. The silent treatment sucks, and I wouldn't want to live with someone like that. She's sulking because she didn't get what she wanted. Going silent treatment or throwing around names? How old is she? If she's an adult, that's not acceptable behavior. Not the jerk. Never stay in a relationship with someone who treats you like this. Immature, toxic people make the worst partners you could ever ask for. Am I the jerk for not allowing my stepson, who's 12, to live with us? I have 2 sons who are 10 and 5, and I'm getting married in the next couple of weeks to my boyfriend who has a 12-year-old son from a previous relationship. My future husband's son asked his dad if he could come live with us after we get married because he wants to experience a genuine family dynamic with parents and siblings, given that his biological parents never married anyone else. My husband is on board with this idea, believing it would contribute positively to the boy's personal growth. I expressed to my husband that I have reservations about having him live with us, based on observations during the weekends he spends at our house. Firstly, he appears to have a strained relationship with my younger son. He rarely includes him in activities unless I specifically ask him to do so. When we're at the park and I ask him to accompany my other son to the restroom for safety reasons, he gets an attitude about it. Secondly, he displays an excessive competitive streak towards my older son. He consistently aims to outperform him and even taunts him when he succeeds. I find this overly competitive atmosphere uncomfortable. I desire my kids to grow up in a nurturing and supportive environment. The third and most significant concern is his academic and behavioral performance. My boyfriend has informed me that his son has been struggling academically and has faced minor behavioral challenges. I'm concerned about his potential negative influence on my kids, particularly my older one. My husband dismisses these concerns as typical for his age, believing that with guidance he can improve. I sought advice from my mother, and she disagrees with me, asserting that providing a united family environment could greatly benefit my stepson. Both of them labeled my reasons as unreasonable. Am I the jerk? Update. I know that I'm not the best person, but I've never mistreated or ignored him. I care for him. I realize now that I was being overly protective of my own kids and not considering things from my future stepson's perspective. Moreover, as a responsible adult, I understand that I have an obligation to help him with behavior and school grades. I talked to my boyfriend and I accept that he can live with us. Now we'll need to move to a new house, so that each kid can have their own room and we'll have to work on getting custody. You're the jerk. You're marrying his father, so you should start considering him as your son as well. If your oldest son starts displaying all these behaviors, then surely you wouldn't just kick him out and give up on him. I would get your boyfriend on board with ways to deal with the behaviors that you're not happy with. You're the jerk. He's your soon-to-be husband's son. He's just as entitled to live under that roof as your kids are. End of story. I cannot believe this is real. You're the jerk. Seems like you fully expect your fiancé to be a father figure to your kids, but you have no interest in being a mother to his. What would your reaction be if your fiancé didn't want your boys living with y'all after marriage? Would it be a deal breaker? Would you consider it? Remember, it's what you're asking from him. You seem very selfish and like you want your idea of the perfect family, which doesn't include stepson. You should look for a partner without kids. You're denying me service? Yes. Our hotel, a 126-room business establishment in northern Minnesota, is completely booked. A significant corporate event with a substantial turnout of around 80 attendees has reserved the majority of our rooms, leaving only 10 available. Unfortunately, these remaining rooms were also claimed by construction workers. Regrettably, many of them exhibit a tendency to react strongly to various situations, often overreacting and seem to enjoy asserting their dominance in confrontations. Among these individuals is Gary, who stands out for being particularly difficult to deal with. On this occasion, Gary approached the front desk with the intention of checking in.
"Hello, I'd like to check in,"
he stated. "Certainly. Could you show me your ID, please?"
"That won't be necessary."
I allowed a brief pause before responding. "Actually, I do need to see your ID."
"No, you really don't. I've been staying here for months. Showing my ID isn't necessary."
I understand your point, but it's our policy to request an ID from all guests.
"Well, nobody else bothers with it,"
he argued. "They might not be following proper procedures. Please provide your ID." Gary, expressing his frustration, continued.
"I'm not going to show you my ID."
"Unfortunately, I won't be able to provide you with your room key unless I see it."
"So, you're denying me service simply because I won't show you my ID?"
"Yes, that's correct." In response, Gary sighed heavily and launched into a tirade. However, I remained unaffected by the outburst of this middle-aged man.
"Others never ask for my ID."
"Sir, even if someone as significant as Jesus himself walked in here, I'd still require a government-issued ID card. So if you wouldn't mind showing me yours." Reluctantly, Gary relented and reached for his wallet. I promptly accessed his reservation details and proceeded. "Thank you. Now could you kindly swipe or insert your card here?"
"I'm not going to do that. Nobody else has ever asked me to."
"This could be due to improper practices elsewhere, but we follow our procedures diligently."
"Your insistence seems more about your ego than anything else," Gary said.
"I have no need to bolster my ego. However, it's essential for you to complete the card process."
"Why is it necessary?"
"In case there's a dispute regarding the charges, having your authorization on record helps us combat fraudulent activity."
"Are you implying that I'm a fraud?"
"No, not at all. But if you could just swipe or insert your card, we'd really appreciate it."
"I'm not gonna do it. I'm not concerned about helping your establishment."
"My responsibility is to ensure that you follow the required procedure," I said.
"Well, I'm not going to comply,"
he maintained. "In that case, I'm afraid I can't give you access to your room."
"Isn't it your job to satisfy customers? Because I'm definitely not satisfied."
While I aim to provide a satisfactory experience, compliance with necessary steps is part of that process.
"Just call your manager,"
he said. "I don't believe that's necessary."
"I won't give you my card."
"Then unfortunately, I can't provide you with your room key. Have a pleasant evening." As I turned away, the unexpected happened. Gary produced his card and completed the required transaction. With the payment confirmed, I handed him his keys and offered a courteous smile. "Enjoy your stay."
"You're quite a stickler, you know that?"
he criticized. "I'm here to ensure a respectful environment. If you engage in any of this mistreatment towards me or my colleagues, I will be compelled to involve the authorities. This is your only warning. Have a good night," I cautioned. Gary started to retort, but upon noticing my actions, he seemed to think better of it and walked away, mumbling at me. Interestingly, his supervisor entered the lobby just 10 minutes later and was displeased by the feedback I provided regarding Gary's behavior. Update. Upon arriving at work today, I picked up a half shift to assist my coworker on a particular busy day. Before my supervisor departed, he mentioned, "Oh, by the way, we no longer offer that construction company rate, and their employees are prohibited from staying on our premises. Remember Gary, your friend? He was involved in 3 separate altercations with our staff yesterday, which led the management to terminate their contract for discounted stays and expel them from our establishment. So there you have it. While I'm not entirely sure of the complete story, I'll provide an update once I find out. Update. Gary's day had commenced with him demanding that our recently hired auditors furnish him with a receipt showing a zero balance before completing the audit process. They were unfamiliar with such a procedure, and Gary proceeded to express his anger towards them. On that same morning, our newly appointed general manager convened a meeting with the sales team to discuss raising the rates for the construction company, given their employees' history of problematic behavior. Additionally, the team mentioned the unsettling treatment their one female colleague at the front desk had been subjected to by the company's employees. Instances included inquiries about her shifts, remarks about her car, and probing questions about her availability. The sales team informed the company's representative that their rates would double and cautioned them about standing on thin ice. Any further incidents would result in the contract being voided, leading to the loss of the discount and a ban from our establishment. Approximately 20 minutes later, Gary stormed downstairs and vented his frustration at my coworker. The new GM subsequently gave the company 30 minutes to vacate our premises and terminated their contract. Am I the jerk for saying I don't like my friend's boyfriend, which caused him to lose a job opportunity? I, 27, have a friend, Natalie, who has a boyfriend, Jamie. Jamie is a complete jerk. He's one of those people who makes below-the-belt jokes and then calls you sensitive if you don't find it funny. In fact, in the 18 months I've known him, he's insulted Natalie to her face too many times to count. He's called many of our mutual friends rude and demeaning things and has purposefully antagonized me on many occasions. We all put up with him because if we don't, we'd never see Natalie, but he really is the butt of every joke and a walking cliche. My roommate Harry recently had a job come up with his company that Natalie asked him to interview Jamie for. Harry is part of our wider friendship group. His friend is dating one of the girls in our group and has met Jamie but not really spent much time with him, so thought he was an alright guy. I decided to keep out of it because I know Jamie has been unemployed for a while and it's really affected Natalie. However, when Harry mentioned he was going to do the interview at our apartment, he could see I was uncomfortable. I didn't mention anywhere near the extent of Jamie's behavior, just said he had made a couple of demeaning remarks to and about me, and I wasn't overly keen on being around him. I told Harry not to do anything about this and that he should hire the best person for the job. Harry went through with the interview, but he made Jamie do a lot of prep work and a presentation to other employees, and then made the interview extremely long for no reason. Then at the end, he said he wasn't going to hire him. Jamie got mad at Natalie over it, and she got mad at me, saying that I shouldn't have said anything about Jamie, knowing how great the job would be and how hard it is to get jobs in the field. On top of that, I should have been sensitive to his unemployment and that I'm ignoring how difficult the job market is. She's now not speaking to me and our friends are divided. 2 think I shouldn't have said anything because Jamie really needs the work and ultimately it would have been helping Natalie. One friend thinks it's fair that I express not wanting Jamie in my home and that I owed it to Harry to tell him because Jamie is an HR problem waiting to happen. On the one hand, yes, his off-the-clock behavior shouldn't cost Jamie a job. But on the other hand, why should I have to cover up for the way Jamie is? If honesty makes him look bad, then maybe that's his problem. Then again, I guess it was kind of petty and it had real-life consequences, so maybe I shouldn't have said anything. I'm not sure whether I should apologize. For everyone asking how it got out that I told Harry, Jamie went home and went off on Natalie about him not getting the job, as it was basically a lock, with Harry doing it as a favor to Natalie. She figured the only person who would have changed Harry's mind about doing her the favor was me, so she called and I ended up telling her the truth. She then told everyone else. Edit. For everyone who missed it in the post, Harry and I are roommates, so my home is his home. Harry has a home office and works out of that office most days. He conducts meetings from there all the time, which is normally fine because I know all of his employees really well. He did not end up having the interview with Jamie at the apartment, he had it at the registered company office. Not the jerk. It's likely that Harry didn't make the interview extremely long for no reason. He did it to test Jamie on the things that came up in your discussion, to see if your passing comments were just you having a personality conflict with a nice guy or if the things you mentioned would be issues in his work. It's likely that the interactions with other employees was to see if others got an uncomfortable vibe. Most people can put on a good front for a short interview. Putting them in more real-world situations shakes people out of their best behavior so you can see who they actually are on the job. You did nothing wrong. Jamie only has himself to blame for not getting the job. The fact that he got angry at Natalie because he didn't get a job tells you a lot about someone not taking responsibility for their own actions. That kind of behavior would totally come up in interactions with his potential coworkers and likely had more to do with why Jamie didn't get the job than anything you said. If he had got the job, he would likely have failed his probation period anyway. Am I the jerk for throwing the clothes on the floor when my kids don't fold them neatly? So I've always been kind of a neat freak mom the entire time my kids have been alive. I always expect their rooms to be clean, and I check drawers, closets, and storage bins to make sure that they don't just shove stuff in there to make the room appear clean. My kids, who are 16, 13, 9, and 6, are all responsible for putting away their laundry, and my eldest two are responsible for folding their own clothes. Which bothers me, because my 13-year-old folds his clothes in a way that bothers me. He rolls them instead of properly folding them. Ever since the kids have been home and have more free time, I'm more strict about the way they put away their clothes. I expect their clothes to be folded in a certain way and stored in a certain way. I read from a mommy blogger a few years ago that when her kids' clothes weren't organized, she would make a mess for them to organize the right way. I considered it for a few years, but now that the kids are old enough, I think it's the way for us to go. I haven't had to do this until yesterday. I walked into my 16-year-old's room while she was FaceTiming her boyfriend and saw her basket of laundry that needed to be folded, and out of curiosity, I opened the drawers and I saw that she had just shoved her clothes in there. I started making a mess and she screamed, "Mom, why?" And I told her she knew why. After that, I walked out of the room. She explained to her boyfriend what I had done, and he says, "Your mom is crazy." And I peek my head into her room, give her a look, and she ends the call with him and breaks down crying. I told my husband what happened, and he told me, "I knew you said you were going to do it, but I didn't think you would actually follow through with it." This morning, I woke up to a note on my daughter's door saying, "Until mom can get mental help, I'm staying with Aunt." I texted her, no response. I tried contacting my sister, who said she has no plans to return until I get mental help and stop being such a controlling jerk. My husband, sister, and mom are all against me, which hurts. I don't think it harmed anyone. It benefits her and helps her stay organized. Update. Almost 2 months ago, I made this post. It really blew up, and even people on Twitter chimed in. Well, the night I made the post, I was still in serious denial. I replied to some comments, and my denial was perfectly clear for everyone to see. The day after, I read some more comments and messages I received from everyone. I resorted to the guest room and cried for hours. I read some people telling me that their moms were similar to me and that they no longer have relationships with them. That was truly my worst fear. I seriously love my kids more than anything on this planet, even if my actions don't always show it. I booked a virtual appointment with a psychologist who diagnosed me with OCD and let me know that she would help me. I've since had about 8 sessions with her, and she's been a big help. Of course, I still have a long way to go, but I've been notching some improvements already. As for my daughter, she stayed at my sister's house and came home a few days after I told her that there would be major improvements in my behavior. I set all the kids down and told them that I have the resources to not be such an overbearing jerk to them anymore. One thing I do want to address is the fact that I was usually controlling with them, but the incident I wrote about was the one that sent both me and my daughter over the edge. Me and her are on much better terms now. I want to thank Reddit for helping me wake up to becoming a better mom and a wife. I also want to apologize to anyone who I brought back bad memories to. I want to have relationships with my kids until we all grow old, and I know so many of you guys don't have that, which breaks my heart, but also hearing your stories gave me a big change of heart and are helping me fix my relationships and become a better person. Park in front of my house? Okay then. It's been about a decade since this happened. I live on a street where some houses have driveways, but some of us don't, and we have to park in the street. We just had enough room to park our 2 vehicles in front of the house. A new neighbor moved in across the street. I'll call her Brittany. Brittany had a tiny Prius and parked in front of our house a lot. She didn't have a driveway. The space in front of her house was almost always empty when this happened. At the time, I had a toddler and a newborn, and getting them into the house was a pain when I had to circle the block and park on the other side of the street, hauling the car seat in one hand while juggling a diaper bag, groceries, and a toddler that hadn't developed a sense of self-preservation yet. The thing that got to me was that there would be plenty of space for 2 cars to park, but Brittany couldn't be bothered to pull forward and scoot back. She usually parked right in the middle so no one else could park near her car. One day, I'd had enough. I hauled the baby, the stuff, and the toddler up to her porch and knocked politely on her door. Me. Hey, I live across the street. I was just wondering if you could park in front of your house instead of mine, please. Brittany. That's like really inconvenient for me to drive around the whole block just to park. Me. I know. But as you can see, gesturing to the circus at my feet, I have my hands full. It makes it harder when you park in front of my house. Can you please try parking in front of yours instead? Brittany. Look, I'll just park where I want. There's no assigned spaces. She slams the door. Oh, it was on. I wasn't sure what my revenge would be, but I knew it would be coming. The opportunity came a couple days later. I came home and my spouse was already parked in front of her car. But lo, the next door neighbor wasn't home yet. I could park behind her. I'd have to scoot up to make sure there was enough room for my other neighbor. They were innocent in all of this. So I pulled up behind them and checked the space. 2 feet of room. Back into the car to inch forward some more. Checked again. Still had a good foot. I kept doing this till there was literally 2 inches between our bumpers. And here's the thing. I had 2 cars at my disposal now, whereas she only had 1. So into the spouse's van I go to inch backwards until there were only inches from kissing bumpers. Perfect. Point of note, both of my vehicles were old, scratched, and beat up. I probably wouldn't have noticed another dent in them, but the Prius was pristine. I knew Brittany wasn't likely to risk it. I expected that I would get a knock on the door sometime that evening, but when I took the trash out that night, Brittany and her Prius were gone. She must have executed a 200-point turn to get out. I cackled to myself and went to bed happy. The best part was, she stopped parking on my side of the street after that one incident. I guess she realized it really was more convenient to park on hers. Am I the jerk for cooking with ingredients my roommate/coworker is allergic to? I, 25 female, have been living with my coworker, male 27, for 2 months in our company's house that they had for seasonal workers. Up until 3 weeks ago, my company reimbursed us for some pantry essentials, such as cooking oil, spices, and rice. My roommate took advantage of that by buying and eating mainly things that were reimbursed, and he'd buy the bougie organic stuff too. The company found out and ended the reimbursements, so we had to pay for our own food. No big deal for me, since most of the stuff I ate didn't qualify for reimbursements. But that meant that roommate would pretty much starve because he doesn't want to spend money on food. Not my problem. It became my problem when he started taking my food. Having gone through 5 years of university, I'm no stranger to inconsiderate roommates, but this is the first time anyone's ever stolen from me. Roommate is allergic to pretty much everything. He's got some rare condition that makes him unable to consume cane sugar, nightshade produce, mushrooms, and anything processed by yeast. For the 2 months we've lived together, he would quite often eat my rice if I didn't label the container. Extremely rude of him, but at the end of the day, it's just rice. Then 3 weeks ago, after our company stopped reimbursing us for pantry items, I bought a bag of rice, made a pot of it, and labeled my container. I came home from work the next day to find all of it gone. My roommate had eaten all of my cooked rice. When I confronted him, he got defensive and claimed that he didn't know. The company never said anything about ending the reimbursements. I called him out on his BS because our manager called both of us into her office to let us know that the company was ending the house reimbursements. I told him to buy and cook his own rice. He ran away crying. Literally, he ran into his room, slammed the door, started bawling his eyes out, and then proceeded to call his parents to complain about how I'm a mean, toxic person and he didn't do anything wrong. To prevent him from eating my rice again, I made a big pot of it using strained mushroom liquid. It's just the water left over from rehydrating dried mushrooms. I put the leftover rice in a couple of labeled containers. Today I came home from work to him curled up in pain on the sofa. I asked him how he liked that mushroom liquid I used in my rice, and he had a huge breakdown. He accused me of hurting him, of how I knew he couldn't eat mushroom products, and yet I cooked rice with it anyway, and how he had filed charges against me for what I did. He ended up filing a complaint with HR and my manager about the whole ordeal, and now I have a meeting with both of them tomorrow afternoon to discuss what happened. Am I the jerk here? Edit. He was faking it the whole time. I heard him laughing over the phone in his room about how now he's gonna have the whole place to himself by next week, and that he can't believe I fell for it. Karen boss tried to use a joke I made to get me fired. I reverse Uno. About 15 years ago, I moved across a few states to where my wife was starting her new position as a professor at a local university. We had the first 3 of our 4 kids, and while I was going to mainly stay home to take care of them, I wanted at least a part-time job for extra money and whatnot. So I took a full-time position as a cook at a retirement home and care facility in the town we'd moved to. I have a culinary degree and years of experience working in small kitchens, hotels, and a previous university kitchen. This was a very small kitchen and had a lot of the hand-me-down practices that have managed to avoid professionalism and efficiency. Basically, whoever ran the kitchen just did what they felt like doing if they thought it made sense. The current head of dietary, who actually hired me, had years of experience, but she was retiring and her position was being taken by a kitchen staff member who was brought into the kitchen from being a housekeeper. She had very little training and no certifications, but was taking the courses as she started the position on the facility's dime. At first, it was very friendly and casual. We all got along fair enough. It was my new supervisor boss. We had me, we had the main cook, Queen, who had plenty of experience in small-town kitchens, and an ex-truck driver, King, who had no experience, but could follow directions and sort out, assemble, the meals as directed. Our facility director, Big Boss, ran the entire place and all departments. I had a habit of maintaining a professional demeanor wherever I worked until I could test the atmosphere and relax into whatever environment it turned out to be. I learned from this incident not to do that and always maintain a professional face at work no matter how relaxed it is because of this incident. After some months in the position, all was mostly fine, but boss had issues with the way I performed my tasks. I used pretty standard practices for preparing, cooking, and expediting meals that she was familiar with. An example would be prepping meal components during downtime as residents of the facility would come to be fed. She was used to just standing at the window, waiting for the nurses to come and give the name of the resident and their meal choice. Then, as the aides cleaned up, she'd rush to prepare food. I would come to the window when a nurse approached, but otherwise be prepping food to go into the ovens and stovetops for the impending lunch hour, or prepping food for the next day's meal. This not only managed time better, but allowed me to avoid many snafus and possibly prep something extra for the independent residents who would request something at the last minute for lunch when they came for the morning meal. They had a tendency to just trickle in, and there weren't more than maybe 40 residents in total. One event would be the morning she came in early to do paperwork, and she saw me preparing 4 full pans of pork chops to put into the cooler until oven time. She was terribly confused. Boss: "What are you doing?" Me: "Pork chops for lunch." "But it's breakfast time." "Yes, breakfast is ready on the steam table." "But you're supposed to be serving breakfast." Me: "I am. As they get here, I get them their breakfast. I've already prepped the veggies and potatoes. After I get these pans in the cooler, I can start the cake for tomorrow's dessert." Boss: But it's breakfast." And so on. This was the start of her trying to change my methods to hers, but almost every time she'd try, I'd resist. At first, she pulled the "I'm in charge" thing, but not often because I had more experience than her and I could explain how my method was standard practice or made more sense than hers. She never had a reasonable explanation that what I was doing shouldn't be done other than, "I don't like it." She really had some ridiculous ideas about how to cook. A few times she would involve the facility head, Big Boss, and I'd get to work and be told I needed to go talk to her. Every single time I managed to defend what I was doing and get agreement from Big Boss that what I was doing was professional and acceptable. More than a handful of times I demonstrated how things Boss expected of me not only weren't efficient, but sometimes skirted or even violated serve safe and food handling safety. A big one was she'd been angry that she now had to bend over to lift out meats out of the boxes on the bottom shelf instead of on the second shelf where she had them previously, above the shelf where we had boxes of lettuce and other raw veggies. I'd been told to continue what I was doing, and Big Boss would then talk to Boss, who would stare daggers at me for the rest of the shift. This went on for months until Big Boss thought she could finally get rid of me through some shenanigans. One day I was called into Boss's office towards the end of my shift, and she said we needed to go talk to Big Boss. We go together, and Big Boss tells me that Boss has brought to her attention my unprofessional behavior in the kitchen. Boss then clarifies by relating a little off-color gag I'd taken part in one day with Queen. We had been putting away our delivery, and each of us had one of those 80-20 meat tubes. Then, just for fun, on a total whim, we both held them out in front of us, swung them around, and chased King around in front of the cooler with them. Yes, it was unprofessional, but this wasn't an isolated incident of tomfoolery, and it was the same sort of play the boss herself had taken part in. Boss thought she had finally gotten me as Big Boss asked me if this had actually happened, and I said it had. Boss starts to explain she can't have that kind of behavior in her kitchen, and it was unprofessional. She loved being able to say that directed at me, considering I'd shown how unprofessional she was previously, and blah blah blah. When she was done and Big Boss looked to me for my response, I apologized and agreed it was inappropriate and I should have known better. But I also explained that I never made an unprofessional joke or took part in any behavior considered unprofessional there until I had seen that it was commonplace in this kitchen. I waited to gauge the environment first until I saw how they conducted themselves in their kitchen. After I saw what they considered acceptable, I took part. I also explained that it was actually Boss who had first made me aware that they were regularly engaging in these types of topics and behavior, and only after she had wandered into that territory did I feel comfortable enough to go there myself. Then I apologized and said it wouldn't happen again, but that everyone, including Boss, should be held to the same expectations. Boss immediately snapped, "What did I do that made you think it was okay to be so offensive?" Which was a huge mistake. Me, "Boss, who's Henry?" At this, she clammed up and her eyes grew wide as she turned so red it was kind of scary. Big Boss looks at Boss in confusion, and Boss just looks back and forth between us in panic. I begin to explain that Henry is a certain item that Boss keeps in our office. I know this because on my second day in the kitchen, the dishwashing machine was, like it was quite often, being repaired because it had broken down again. The repairman was this guy that Boss and Queen kept staring at and giggling about. Queen jokes she thinks Boss is sabotaging the machine so that this guy will have to come repair it again. At one point, he goes out to his truck and Queen tells Boss she should just go for it, asking him out or whatever. And Boss declines, smiling and giggling, and then says, "Looks like I have a date with Henry tonight." Queen chuckles, and I ask who is Henry. Queen tells me it's Boss's special friend, and Boss finishes by saying that, "A girl's got to do what a girl's got to do, even if she has to keep buying batteries." I go on to explain that Queen can confirm this, and there are probably other instances where others were present where Boss was engaging in similar discussion or taking part in similar joking around, and that it was only after a few weeks of this behavior that I feel comfortable in taking part. Big Boss is looking at Boss for a rebuttal, but Boss is still standing there shuffling her feet, sweating bullets. Big Boss then thanks me for being frank, and that from this point forward, none of that behavior is acceptable from anyone, and excuses me to finish my shift as Boss stays behind to presumably get yelled at. There were a few instances of us butting heads after that along the same lines as before, but she didn't talk to me much after. I ended up moving on a couple of months after. Am I the jerk for telling my wife it's ridiculous to cry over soup? My wife is 4 months pregnant with our 5th kid. We have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old now. Since childcare is so expensive, she's been staying home. Money is tight right now, and her car broke down, so we've been relying on mine. She texted me and told me she was craving a particular can of soup, so I bought it and brought it home. She placed it on the counter and said she would make it after she gave the kids a bath. While she was upstairs, my dad came over and mentioned he was hungry, so I told him to help himself to anything in the kitchen as we had made dinner shortly before. Well, he ended up leaving to go home, and my wife came downstairs, then I heard her frantically searching for something. I asked what she was doing, and she was looking for the soup she left out. I told her I haven't seen it and that my dad came over, but he usually doesn't eat canned foods. I called him, and he admitted he did in fact take it and that he was sorry because he was unaware she was saving it. When I told her this, she started sobbing and saying she can never have one thing in this house and how bad she was craving it and wanting it so bad. She cried for almost an hour over it. Later, I told her that she was being ridiculous and that she was an adult, and crying over something as stupid as a can of soup was for kids. She told me I didn't understand, and she's feeling very emotional lately and stressed. I talked to my mom, who told me I needed to give her grace and that my words were very jerkish. Am I the jerk? Edit. When I leave work, I'm going to buy her all the vegetable soup they have in stock. Also, when I say money is tight, I don't mean that we're struggling to survive. We took out a loan to build 3 extra bedrooms onto our home. Her car broke down about 2 months ago. I do leave her the car if she needs to take our daughter and son to their therapy appointments or if she wants to go somewhere. I was also outside building when my dad popped over. He stopped by to see if I needed help building the rooms. My wife was upstairs for a while doing bedtime routines, so they didn't see each other. I'll apologize and do the bedtime routine tonight and pick out the scariest shark movie I can find. She loves Jaws movies, so we will spend some time together. I do love my wife, even if it doesn't appear that way. Also, yes, we have 5 kids, but we wanted a big family. I wanted 3, she wanted 4. I was an only child, and she came from a big family. We had 4. After our last baby, she told the doctor she wanted her tubes tied. We aren't struggling to survive. We have food, shelter, clothes, and occasionally we go out to dinner and take the kids to fun places. The only issue is childcare because it's cheaper for her to stay home, and she asked me if it would be okay until our youngest goes to preschool. We may have a lot of kids, but we do take care of them. I work long hours at 2 jobs, so I'm pretty exhausted when I come home. Plus, I'm building rooms for our kids. I do help with my kids. I love my family. You're the jerk. She's pregnant. She's been dealing all day with 4 little tyrants. She feels unattractive and she had a craving for some soup. As a comfort, and probably because she didn't get to finish a meal all day. The correct response should have been, "I'm sorry, it looks like Dad ate it. Go sit down and put your feet up. Give me 30 minutes and I will bring you a bowl." Then get in the car, get the soup, plus a few extra cans and maybe her favorite candy bar or something, and pamper her. What you did was mean. Don't invalidate people's feelings. You're the jerk. If money is tight, then why are you having more kids? Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.